We continue our discussions here at the Gallagher Convention Centre at the DA's Federal Elective Congress. We're still busy at this particular point inside. In fact, the delegates, some 2,000 voting on the constitutional amendments. I want to bring in now Dr. Hlengiwe Ndlovu, who's a senior lecturer at Wits School of Governance. Dr. Ndlovu, thank you very much indeed for your time. So we've really been talking about coalitions and the prospects. What are we looking at? I see it's also contained in the constitutional amendments of the Democratic Alliance, as well as the resolutions brought up quite prominently there. To what extent does this Congress actually prepare the Democratic Alliance for the possibility of coalition government?
Well, Griselda, I think it's an important question that we should be asking right now, given the circumstances that we've been in as a country, but also the situation broadly. Because if this Congress is not going to achieve what they've claimed to present themselves as an alternative, it will be tragic for not only for them but for the country, because we're sitting in a country where a lot of people are so dissatisfied. South Africans are frustrated. They're looking for an alternative. But the question is this Congress going to prepare itself for that? I think a takeaway from that is, what do they do post the sitting here? How are they going to prepare themselves? Because right now, as we know, the coalitions are struggling all over the big metros. If you're struggling to hold together metro municipalities, how are we thinking about coalitions at a national level when we're already in a crisis within factional politics and all of that?
And I wanted to bring that in. It's been absolute chaos, and I think everyone is in agreement with that sentiment. What are the implications of that at a more national level then, where clearly the political bickering that we have seen in all these metros have been at the detriment, or to the detriment, of service delivery for the ordinary rank and file? So at national level, what are we likely to see the implications of that being?
It is disastrous because here we're having different political parties with completely different ideological backgrounds advocating for completely different things. But the experiences of South African also, they've undergone through a series of histories of slavery, histories of colonialism, and what we've been right now. So the question is, how do we then, get to a point where we move towards proper redress? But we're going there with political parties that are ideologically different, advocating for different things, and are they even having any conversations before they move, to the table to think about coalitions? Are they having ongoing conversations around how are we thinking about governing the country when we are tabling, our ideas on the table? What is at stake? Is it all about pushing the governing party outside, or it's all about servicing the South Africans broadly? And I think this is the question that we're yet to see, happening in the political space as we race for 2024 national elections.
And what pertinent questions does this Congress then need to pose or ask itself if it wants to appeal to the broader majority in this country?
One of the biggest questions is the ideological question in terms of who is the target population, who is, the larger constituency in terms of voting. And these are the Muslim majority poor who are always frustrated about issues of service delivery, about poor governance and all of those things. So that's one of the questions. But the other question is a question around youth. You're looking at the leadership right now, the people who are running, and you're thinking about transformation. Are we as South Africa, how far are we from transformation, whether it's gender transformation or it's empowering young people? And then we're sitting here looking at the candidates that are running, for leadership positions, and we are asking ourselves, is there even a space, for young people within the DA? Is there a space, for women like positions within the movement. So those are very important questions as they emerge here from this conference. These are the questions that they must ask and reflect on, like, seriously, because the young voters on the streets are young people. The young voters on the streets are the majority poor. Do they have the ideological orientation that appeals to the majority of South Africans? Those are important questions that they should be asking themselves.
Often people say, sloganeering and, political gimmicks don't really get, the electorate to where you want them to go in terms of, considering them to vote for you. Doesn't matter which political party it is. What does the DA, I'm just taking a look at our screen there at the moment. I can hear a lot of screams coming from that side inside the Congress itself. But, do we see these political parties focusing too much on the governing party? Or is it key that you have the official opposition harp on where the governing party has failed to show that it could be that alternative for the majority in this country? Or is it not the good way to go? Or have they been successful in capitalizing also on the failures of the governing party?
I think sloganeering is one of the biggest problems. We do have a bigger problem on the table. The question is, what are we doing about that problem? So what we've seen in the political space, for the past years, we've seen instead of tangible oppositional politics, that is offering an alternative. Instead of that, we've seen, what exactly that you're talking about, to say you're trying to replace getting into the space but not necessarily bringing any ideological change.
Yeah.
If you are posing yourself as an opposition party, you need to ask yourself very difficult questions. Of course, you need to reflect on the failures of the other government, but also not as a way of reflecting them. So as we reflect on the 2021 local government elections...
Tell me why you are better. Kind of, yeah.
Yes. So it's not just about pushing out the opposition or whoever is sitting on the space, but it's all about how are you thinking around the challenges, but also not just thinking, how are you positioning yourself to address those challenges? What are the strategic entry points, into the problems that the majority of South Africans are facing, where you're going to position yourself and address? And I think this is a conversation that we have to see unfolding. What we're hearing now and what we read from the manifestos is just a conversation between political parties that does not necessarily include South Africans broadly.
Yeah. When you look at Nelson Mandela Bay, and in fact I just spoke to the mayor just a few moments ago, you have the biggest coalition in that particular space. Do we learn anything from what we're seeing happening in the metros? The instability that has been there, where these political parties with these different ideologies are not able to sit around the table and do things in the interest of the people that voted for them.
Yes, this is the point that I alluded to before, to say the conversations that are happening around the table, they've got nothing to do with the interests of South Africans. They've got everything to do with oppositional politics and who's better than the other. And what we're seeing in Nelson Mandela Bay is what we saw even in Tshwane, the residents of Tembisa.
Yeah.
Even the city of Ekurhuleni. So this is something that keeps on happening. I think that is a space where political parties must learn in terms of how do they put so we agree that we have different ideologies, right? But when we are coming to the table, how do we then move past those ideological issues in a way that they do not jeopardize service delivery, because at stake is service delivery and the conversations that are happening. And South Africans are watching and they're desperate, for an alternative. But what they are seeing and learning right now from the coalition government is not giving hope.
But how would that even work? Because when we heard the federal chairperson, Dr. Ivan Meyer, open this particular Congress, he spoke about, going to the union buildings in a coalition government. So that tells you that the Democratic Alliance is saying, that we possibly wouldn't even get that 50 plus, or the African National Congress with what it is saying is in the 40%. So what do you, with who then, if the Democratic Alliance speaks like that, to say that it is going to the union buildings in a coalition government? With who? Because it does not get along with the EFF. It is not concise in terms of the African National Congress and how it would possibly work with the ANC. Then who? How? How is this going to unfold?
Exactly, Griselda. We're going back to the question of ideological differences. So if we are different, I think we must reach at least a working, a working point where we're saying like, okay, we know we are different from ABCD, but at the same time, there are citizens at stake. We need to deliver services. So as they are going into to the union buildings, they need to reflect on that very broadly.